The trucking industry is now short a record high 80,000 drivers. That is according to the head of American Trucking Associations, a major industry trade organization. The lack of drivers is a big factor in the supply chain crunch facing the country. President Joe Biden previously ordered ports to stay open 24/7. However, they cannot operate at full capacity because there aren't enough trucks to load goods. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Dr. Anthony Cannizzaro, Associate Professor of International Business and Strategic Management at the Busch School of Business at the University of America. Dr. Cannizzaro, welcome. Great to be with you. Many people are still really confused as to why we're having these supply chain issues now and why something wasn't done sooner to resolve this. Can you tell us why both businesses and policymakers still appear to be scrambling over solving the supply chain issue?
Yes. Well, first, it helps to understand exactly what we're talking about. So the supply chain is essentially the process from sort of taking things out of the ground, adding value to them all the way to the end consumer. And the world we live in, we have a global supply chain. So these different parts of the process take place all around the world. As a consequence of outsourcing and specializing in different countries, different types of production, we enjoy a very sort of efficient supply chain. However, we've discovered at the same time that this specialization has not left us with a very resilient supply chain. We never asked the question, what happens if an entire country's production was knocked offline? And that's exactly what happened in the pandemic. We sort of had a 1-2 punch. Supply of many goods was constrained during lockdowns, and companies around the world failed to return to our previous levels of productivity due either to ongoing restrictions from government policy or labor shortages. And at the same time, we've sort of had odd fluctuations in demand where demand for some goods surged while demand for other goods fell. So this combination of supply issues and demand distortions are sort of now rippling through supply chains, what we call in business the bullwhip effect. And this is demonstrated just how fragile our global supply chain is and how difficult it is for both government and business to respond.
Yeah, that's a really great explanation there. You may have heard this, not sure, but it's been in the news yesterday. White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki was questioned about the supply chain issues and really kind of made an interesting remark when the reporter basically said that people were having trouble getting items, including treadmills, to which Psaki responded, the tragedy of the treadmill that was delayed, kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer there. That said, it isn't just treadmills that are being caught up in this supply chain crunch. It's also basic items like food. Where do you see this heading, and what are the long-term implications?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's not just treadmills. We have, I think, over 100 container ships now outside the port of Los Angeles. Shipping prices have raised over 500% since this time last year, which is going to impact both the prices and supply of lots of different types of goods. And the biggest negative of this is going to be inflation, right? So we're going to see increased prices across the board. So not just supply issues, but going forward, we have this experience that some of these changes in prices will be sticky. So we're just going to be paying more for everything. Just to give a positive side of this, hopefully this results in us diversifying our supply chain and making it more resilient, and then decoupling us from China, a relationship with a lot of people consider very asymmetric.
Yeah, and before I let you go, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'm wondering, a lot of people are worried about the holidays. We've been hearing a lot about that supply chain issues affecting what's available in stock. Can you talk to us about how that impacts or could impact the price? As you mentioned, we're already seeing a rise in price due to inflation.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see both prices rise and a lack of availability, right? And so this is going to be, unfortunately, a mutually sort of a vicious cycle, right? Mutually self-reinforcing, because we've seen in conjunction with the supply chain issues, sort of a new movement in labor where strikes, say at John Deere, are going to, workers are striking because of inflation, right? And this is in effect going to raise the cost of the supply chain, and it's going to further create inflation, right? So what we're going to end up seeing happen is, say, a farmer can't get equipment from John Deere, and they're going to then have to delay, and that will increase the price of food, and that's going to ripple through the entire supply chain to all of us. you're going to see something equivalent to this in, I think, almost every category of goods that we source, both here domestically because of what's happening in the labor movement here and abroad.
Well, Dr. Cannizzaro, thank you so much for your time and for weighing in and explaining all of that for us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.